So today we're diving into A Triumph of Surgery, a story that's, both absolutely hilarious and a pretty sharp warning about how our best intentions can sometimes go spectacularly wrong.
And really, this is the question that kicks off the whole story. We all adore our pets, right? But is there a point where that love crosses a line and actually becomes harmful? What happens when our so-called care is the very thing that's making them sick?
All right, so let's meet the cast. We've got our little dog, Tricky, and his doting owner, Mrs. Pumphrey. And then there's the vet, Mr. Harriet, who sees the problem from a mile away. He gets right away that Tricky's cure isn't going to be found in some pill or potion, but in a kind of tough love that Mrs. Pumphrey just isn't capable of.
Okay, let's get into the first part of our story. A classic case of overindulgence. You see, Tricky isn't suffering from some mysterious illness. His problem is something much closer to home.
I mean, wow, the vet's description is, well, it's brutally honest and it paints a pretty startling picture, right? Tricky isn't just a bit chunky. He's compared to a bloated sausage, a description that tells you he's basically lost the shape of a dog. With his red, watery eyes and his tongue hanging out, he is clearly not in a good way.
So how on earth did it get this bad? Well, Mrs. Pumphrey got it in her head that he was weak, maybe suffering from malnutrition, so her solution, out of love, was to pile on all these little extras between his regular meals. And here's the crazy part, the real irony. In her attempt to build him up, she was literally burying him in food.
And this right here, this is really the root of the problem. Mrs. Pumphrey's logic is all emotion, no reason. To her, saying no to a treat feels like the cruelest thing in the world. She just can't see that all this love is actually what's making him so sick.
Now, the vet's advice couldn't be more straightforward. Less food, more walks. It's just common sense, really. But as you can probably guess, for Mrs. Pumphrey, hearing that advice is one thing, but actually doing it, that's a whole other story.
So, okay, the simple advice isn't working. The vet knows he has to step in and take charge. And this leads to the story's big turning point, a plan that's, well, pretty radical, and honestly, kind of brilliant.
And yep, just like the vet knew would happen, that dreaded call comes in. Because Mrs. Pumphrey couldn't stick with the plan, Tricky's little body finally just gave up. He's now critically ill, not from some mysterious disease, but purely from being overfed. It's that simple and that sad. The vet's only real move here is to get Tricky out of that environment. And he's smart about it. He frames it as a hospitalization, using a serious medical word that he knows Mrs. Pumphrey will respect. It's really the only way he can save the dog from his owner's loving but lethal kindness.
Okay, this scene is it's hilariously over the top. It shows you exactly how pampered this little dog is. I mean, the staff is running around packing a daybed, a nightbed, special cushions, toys, and separate bowls for breakfast, lunch, and supper. This dog has more luggage for a 2-week trip than most people. The vet has to make a run for it before they load his car with the whole house.
So, Tricky gets to the clinic, and you can just imagine Mrs. Pumphrey back home, picturing all these complicated medical procedures. But what the vet actually has planned is way simpler. And that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Mrs. Pumphrey hears surgery, and she's thinking scalpels and operations. But what kind of procedure did Tricky actually have?
And this is where you see the genius of the vet's plan. It's all about this massive gap between what Mrs. Pumphrey thinks is happening and what's really going on. While she's worrying at home, Tricky's treatment is basically a complete system reset. No food at all for 2 days, plenty of water, and the freedom to just run around and play with the other dogs. It's about letting a dog just be a dog again.
And there's this really cool social side to his recovery too. At first, the other dogs are kind of like, what is this silky little thing? They just ignore him. But pretty soon he learns he has to hustle for his food and starts joining in their games. He's finding his inner dog, finally becoming part of a pack instead of a pampered toy. So the vet gives Mrs. Pumphrey an update, telling her Tricky is convalescing, getting better fast. But for her, that word just sets off a whole new wave of anxious generosity. And this is where things get really funny for the vet and his team. To help build up Tricky's strength, she starts sending supplies. First, it's 2 dozen fresh eggs a day. Then, bottles of wine, to enrich his blood, of course. And finally, brandy. And you can guess where it all really went, right? None of it ever got near Tricky. The vet and his staff, however, had a pretty fantastic couple of weeks.
You gotta love this quote from the vet.
He jokes that with daily deliveries of eggs, wine, and brandy, it was seriously tempting to just keep Tricky there forever. I mean, the little dog's recovery had turned into a very happy occasion for all the humans involved.
All right, so this brings us to the grand finale. 2 weeks have passed, it's time for Tricky to go home, and his transformation is nothing short of a miracle. But the reason for it? Well, that's a secret his owner is never going to figure out.
And wow, what a transformation. It's just incredible. That bloated sausage is gone. In his place is this lean, hard-muscled, energetic animal. He's a proper dog now, keeping up with the whole pack. And it all happened with zero medicine, just a bit of sense.
So the big reunion, it's just as emotional as you'd expect. The second Tricky sees her, he just launches himself like a rocket right into her lap. She is just over the moon, so thrilled to see him looking so alive and healthy, all while having absolutely no clue how it actually happened.
And this is the punchline of the whole story. It's just perfect. With happy tears streaming down her face, she declares his recovery a triumph of surgery. She will always believe her little dog was saved by some amazing, complex medical operation, never guessing that the real surgery was simply cutting him off from her own well-meaning but disastrous pamper.
And so that leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? Tricky's story is funny for sure, but there's a serious lesson in there. It really makes you stop and ask, where is that line between caring for someone and just spoiling them? And when does our effort to provide comfort actually start to cause harm? That's definitely something worth thinking about.